Hello and welcome to Courageous Conversations.
We're here to talk honestly about race, faith, and what it really means to love our neighbor at all costs.
Each and every episode, we are going to sit down with friends and leaders from across Kansas City to share stories. We're going to ask hard questions and we'll laugh a little bit along the way.
To unite people, unite neighborhoods, and eventually unite KC. Let's jump into today's conversation.
Hello and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, no matter where you are. And welcome to another podcast of Courageous Conversations. I'm here with my co-host, Gary Kendall. Gary?
Yes, Ray, thank you. It's good to be with each one of you who are listening. And as we get started today, we do want to invite you into the conversation. And one of the ways you can participate is just by subscribing and then by sharing these courageous conversations with others, and we hope you'll have your own. You can find us on Spotify, you can find us on Apple, you can find us on our website at unitekc.org, on YouTube, a variety of places. But if you'll share them with your friends and pass that on, then I think we spread the word.
Absolutely. Well, today, it's just going to be Gary and I, but we're going to do a podcast called Foundations. And we're going to just tell our stories about how we got started in this work. Gary, you want to add a little bit to that before we get started?
Well, I think we kind of dived in with a lot of other things first. We're maybe 8 or 9, 10 episodes into our podcast here. But we thought it would be good maybe to go back to the origin story of like, what was it that caused Gary to want to be an advocate for racial justice and harmony, or what caused Ray to put his name in the hat to become the head of Unite KC and take on this adventure that we're on.
It's an adventure.
So, it is an adventure. So maybe we'll go back to some origin stories, and maybe what we hope is that that'll spark your own thinking, like what has happened in your life, and then what can God do with that to help that initial kind of beginning to grow.
And you know something, Gary, I firmly believe that with this podcast that people are going to go, you know what, I feel like I should probably be a part of what's going on. Yes. And even if you don't do it with Unite KC, find a place where you can do one good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Gary, why don't we let you start out, and, I'll let you go first and everything.
Thank you. Glad to do it. So I grew up in Alaska, and I missed a lot of the 60s and the early 70s and what was happening in what we call the lower 48. Mm-hmm. So I was aware of the assassination of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., so I knew about that. But a lot of the unrest that followed it and a lot of the different ripple events really didn't make the news in Alaska. Or if they did, I was young enough that I wasn't paying attention. But God was getting my attention in a different way. My mom and dad were going into a pioneering church, a very small church in Anchorage, Alaska. And by God's grace, they built it up and it grew over the next 10 years or so. But in the beginning, it was pretty small. And in our small little congregation, there was a couple that was a black couple called the Brazils. My dad and mom called them Brother and Sister Brazil. I don't know if I ever knew their first names. Now, I did know a couple things. Sister Brazil could cook the best biscuits in the world.
Oh, my goodness.
There was no better biscuits. They would melt in your mouth. And then they would sing. And she would play the piano, and he would sing a deep baritone voice. It was amazing. It was like heaven came down. And they were a big part of our church. They were very close with our family. For all practical purposes, I didn't have a conscience that there was any differences other than the fact we were different colors. But, I wasn't aware of culture or the other kinds of problems surrounding black and white issues in those days. I just knew that there wasn't any reason that we needed to be divided. And I went along with that naivete till I was about in high school. And in high school, I was a sophomore in high school when a fight broke out in our school, and it was along racial lines. And a white student and a black student got into a big fight, and the whole school was in an uproar. I was aghast that this was happening because I couldn't understand why they would fight just because they were different races or colors.
Right.
And so that was my first education. And I'm admitting here that I was naive. I'm admitting I was sheltered and all of those things. But what I can tell you is something rose up inside me that I think was probably godly, just to say, this shouldn't be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I started trying to find out why it was that way and then what I could do about it. So that's a journey we can talk about a little bit later. But that's how God first got my attention. It wasn't through TV. It was just through a couple that I have loved for as long as I've lived.
Wow.
And I really want other people to have those kind of relationships. And I know everyone could. Everyone could have a brother and sister Brazil in their life, or could have a Gary and Belinda Kendall in their life, people who, admittedly, we see color, but it's not a hindrance.
Right.
It's actually, I think that we're better together. There's a sweetness. There's our friend Lester Estelle Sr., who was on here, called it spicy.
That's
There's
right.
a spice that we're missing if we don't welcome the other cultures.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned that, because the accusation is that sometimes certain groups of people don't put enough spice in their food. So,
True.
But that's not what we're talking about this time. Well, as you were sitting there talking, I just remember the seeds of little Ray Jarrett becoming involved in something like Unite KC were formed right around the time that Dr. King was murdered. And so for me, when I look back, I just remember really kind of being afraid all the time. Now, I was too young to know when Medgar Evers was shot, but I was told that he was shot right there in his driveway of his home.
I've heard
and
that.
what a terrible way
Right.
of, your wife and kids to see that.
Yeah.
And then, but soon after that was the assassinations of Dr. King and then John F. Kennedy. And I'm just
Right.
like, okay,
Right.
so this happens all the time, that people and people are in uproars, and people are, in turmoil. And so I just
You were
want to.
7 or.
That's right. Yeah. So I remember being in 3rd, 4th grade. Yeah. So old enough to know what was going on, but just not understanding, like you said, well, why is this? Why are people fighting, and why is this happening? And I do specifically remember when Dr. King was shot, and I think I've told you and the listening audience about this in an earlier podcast. It was I have never seen grief like that across so many lines of race. We go to the grocery store, people were crying for weeks.
Right.
And they were talking to one another. What are we going to do? What's going to happen to our country? So I'm just like, what? Oh my gosh, this is terrible.
It was horrific.
It was. And so, I learned later that there were marches that were happening in Missouri. And so I also remember telling you that the kind of like the epicenter of social justice was in my living room, in my dad's
Right.
living room.
Right.
And I do remember my uncle, who was a pastor, and my dad and a lot of his brothers. He had a pretty big family, and some of the people in the neighborhood having discussions about, what we're going to do and what we could join in and do. And so I had a sense of responsibility, I think, put in me that you don't sit around and do nothing when you see injustice.
Right.
And also what it was tempered by, we have to do this the way the Word of God says. Because my dad and my preacher, the uncle, they were really adamant that we don't violate God's Word.
I love that. So both of us had a good start.
Yeah.
Not all of our listeners had a good start.
Yeah, that's true.
For some of you listening, you may think, well, Gary's really naive and, has a long way to go, and that would probably be true. But if we roll the timeline forward a bit, I went to Houston, Texas, and moved into a part of Houston called Houston Heights. And Houston Heights today is rebounded, and it's actually a really nice part of the city. But when I lived in Houston Heights, it wasn't.
Oh, boy.
And so I'm coming from Alaska, where we had this cosmopolitan, I think I've mentioned this before, where, we were just as likely to have an Asian friend or someone who was an Aleut or Indian friend, or we had a Elmendorf Air Force Base, so we had a lot of blacks from Elmendorf, and then there was an Army base, Fort Richardson, as well. So we were pretty cosmopolitan, which I thought was like, well, everybody's like that.
Right.
Until I moved to Houston.
Okay.
And boy, did I get an education really fast. So my first year in Houston, I'm a young student preparing to prepare for the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I'll join a bus route that picks up kids for church.
Okay.
And that's one way that I can give back and probably learn a little bit and show the love of Jesus. And so I was assigned to this bus that I found out later, everybody on the bus except the driver and me was a person of color. So everybody was either black or brown. And so that didn't really alarm me. I thought, well, good. And so the very first ride, we're riding along, and these two Hispanic girls get into a shouting match with a black girl and her brother, and it escalates till they're pulling each other's hair and stuff like that. So I thought naively that I should try to settle this fight. So I went to the back of the bus and I put my hand on one of the girls' shoulders and started to try to pull them apart. Well, as soon as I did, then the brother punched me in the face.
Whoa.
And so when you're tasting blood and then you're trying to figure out what do I do next, it just occurred to me, I don't understand this culture. Like, I understand fights.
Yeah.
I've been in fights.
And bus rides and
right.
kids.
But the first thing that came to my mind was, don't do anything in retaliation. And I think probably that was God.
Oh, yeah.
And I just decided to sit down and kind of collect myself. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because I was afraid of the kids. I was bigger than they were.
Sure.
But I was aware I was out of my element. That's the point I want to make. And so I didn't say a lot to those kids later. We talked with them when they got off the bus and went over the rules of how they could ride the bus again if they wanted to. I was on the bus for a year and ended up, making friends with those kids. But that was my first entryway. It wasn't very long after that till these two Hispanic girls, these two sisters, still continued to act out. And so the bus driver thought it would be a good idea if I went and talked to their parents. Again, so here's this naive white guy preparing for ministry. I go up to the house. We dropped the girls off, and I went there on a Saturday so I'd have time to talk to him. And he's sitting on the porch with a beer in kind of a rocking chair kind of situation. And so I went up, and of course the girls said hi, but they scurried back in the house. And anyway, I started telling him about the problem we were having and how we're trying to solve it. I was actually saying your girls can't ride the bus for a week because this has happened repeatedly. And he got angry and started calling me names in Spanish that I don't even know what they mean.
Oh, man.
And then pulled a knife on me and told me to get off his porch in no uncertain terms. I did.
Gary.
I got off really quickly.
Yeah, I bet you did.
But as I got off, I knew he could at least understand some English. And I said, look, we love God. We love Jesus. We love your girls. We'll be back. And with that, I got to the bus as fast as I could. But so that was another time that I had just confrontations you have to learn from. So I learned again from that same year, like when I'm rolling forward. I know that I'm taking up a lot of time here, but
this is really good.
I hope it makes a point that if you decide you're going to do something, then you probably are going to face things you didn't understand. So again, same neighborhood, wasn't the same family, but I was going through the park. There's a park there one day with a friend of mine, and there were some Hispanic teens. They were, I would say, middle school age probably. And they had a white boy on the ground, and they were kicking and beating and stomping and punching this boy. So I ran over there, feeling like, hey, this boy might die if he doesn't get some help.
Yeah.
There's probably 6 or 7 of them. And so I went over there, and when they saw me coming, my friend and I were college age. They were probably middle school. Then they ran away. We helped the boy up, and we're trying to decide if we should take him to the hospital or, what he needed. While we're standing there, the older brothers of the high school kids come riding up on motorcycles, and they're probably early 20s. There's at least 6 of them on motorcycles, and they start yelling at us and telling us to stay out of their business, so to speak, and to leave the boy alone. And again, I'm naive and innocent. I'm trying to help. So I was saying to them, we're afraid for this boy's life, and they said, well, he stole a bicycle. And I said, I don't know if he stole a bicycle or not,
But he's hurt.
But yeah, this is going in a bad direction. It's going to be bad for you and for this boy. If something bad happens to him, they didn't care. They got off their bikes and formed a circle around us and, said that we were going to pay for intervening.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy pulled a knife. And, as this is all, it happens so fast, you don't even realize what is happening before it's around you. Mm-hmm. And so I'm praying and I'm looking around thinking, okay, God, you parted the Red Sea, can you get us out of this?
Right.
And I saw the one, I thought, well, who is the leader? Can I talk sense to the leader? Mm-hmm. And two of my friend and this other guy, they were already circling each other because who was going to throw the first punch?
Right.
And we were badly outnumbered. But I picked out the guy that I thought was the leader, and I kind of walked over to him in a very non-threatening way, said, hey, look, this wasn't your fight. It isn't our fight. We're just trying to do the right thing.
Sure.
And I said, the reality is by now, someone could have already called the cops when they see what's happening. It's going to go a lot further, like in the wrong direction than maybe you wanted to go or it needs to go. I think you should just let us go. And he looked at me, and he looked at the guys, and he looked back at me, and he goes, okay, go. And it truly was like the Red Sea parted, So we took this middle-aged boy with us, and we're able to take him to his parents' home, and his parents decided not to take him to the hospital. But anyway, the point I want to make is that when we decide we're going to advocate for, let's just call it justice, mm-hmm. And we're going to do it in a cross-cultural place, we just have to be ready for the fact that there's going to be adversity.
Right.
And I learned a lot. I also was a referee for a black girls basketball league. Now, what do you think that was like? Whoever assigned me that role, I was at the YMCA. And,
at the Y, no less.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
Yeah,
right downtown, the downtown Y.
I know where you're talking, yeah.
So anyway, I just want to say from all those experiences, none of those, as scary and as hard as those were, and I'm sure people listening probably say, well, I've had a lot harder than that.
Yeah.
My sister was shot, or you could go on and on. I'm sure there's a lot worse things than what I experienced, but that was my experience. Mm-hmm. And what it did do inside of me was where I started out not thinking there was a problem. It just made me realize there really is a problem. And if we don't do something about it, it'll only get worse. Mm-hmm. And it's worth our effort, even if in the doing, we have difficulty.
Right. Going through and really just kind of articulating the way you did that there's a problem. When I go back, so now I'm going to go forward in time. So my dad's doing really well. He's graduated from Rockhurst College, and he's got a great career going on financially. We're moving up, and what I noticed is that we were just always at the front end of the curve as far as moving to better neighborhoods. Okay. So whenever we would move to a new neighborhood, it was a better, bigger house, but we were usually the first black people in the neighborhood, right? And so, I only got to move twice, actually, and then the third time was a palatial house that I never got to live in because I had left home. I was out, and my parents said, we suddenly found we had more money after you left home. And I'm like, So what happens is that my parents make the decision to send me to Christian school. And so I start to have these experiences where I'm constantly ridiculed every day. I mean, I get called the N-word every day. I have no friends, usually one or two friends out of the whole school, and dating girls was out of the question because even though I did talk one girl into liking me, her friends ridiculed her for liking a little black boy.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I mean, I did get into a lot of one-sided fights where, I just didn't fight back, didn't learn to fight back, and didn't want to get in trouble for fighting.
Right.
And more importantly, I was at a Christian school, so I thought becoming a Christian meant now you got to do everything that's in the Bible.
You got to love people.
That's right. And so I was flabbergasted that I could be treated. So me being naive, now I tried to even the score once I got in about 9th or 10th grade. And then I did some really made some poor decisions because I thought that fighting now is the way to solve these problems. But if I fast forward to so now I'm graduating and I can tell all kinds of stories about that period in my life, but I'm graduating and I'm getting out of that situation. But what I remembered the most, especially the final injustice of how I ended up being the salutatorian and not the valedictorian, the final injustice, I just said, somebody needs to do something about this. Yeah. And so again, I'm just like, okay, I felt powerless.
Right.
And I'm going to just really fast forward and try to shorten this story. But now I'm in corporate America. Okay. And a bunch of people decided that they wanted to form a group in this major telecommunications company that I was working at that would help black upcoming people in the organization to prepare themselves so that we could occupy more of the senior management slots.
Okay.
And so I didn't know if we needed that, but they showed me the data. Yeah. And the data that this company was touting is, look at us, we're very progressive.
Wow.
And you had to have some kind of and I'm going to say a bad word or bad face, affirmative action program in place to get government contracts. So it showed that we had this percentage that looked pretty good on paper of minorities who worked at the company. And then but we pull the curtain back and most of them worked in the mailroom and driving trucks and stuff like that. So as a matter of fact, at the time, there was in the whole company, just one vice president and a smattering of managers and then a few supervisors. Yeah. So to really shorten the story, we were really good at organizing. And so this was my first experience at starting something from scratch along with this group. And so we got to the point to where we got the funding to kind of have a national conference for this little group. Okay. And we elected presidents and everything, officers. There was going to be all these satellite offices in all these different states where the company operated. And then so we were riding high. Yes. And so we were at our celebration dinner, and we invited one of the people, presidents or vice presidents, to speak. And he goes, so want to congratulate you guys, but the company's decided that you can have local affiliations, but you can't have a national one. And so that's it. You can't. And so, in turn, several of us got up but I remember feeling so disenfranchised, and
the rug pulled out.
That's right.
You.
And even being associated with it probably hurt my career somewhat, which actually prompted me to go off and be an entrepreneur and start my own IT company. So, at any rate.
What's really sad is I could predict where that was going to go.
Oh,
and I don't.
You had never heard the story. Yep.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, well, it actually was, again, so I got these two things that have happened, And I didn't know it, but now I've got all this reason to maybe want to do something, but I just, what do you do? So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be demotivating.
Yeah.
And I think that is why some people bail on this particular challenge. I've talked to too many whites who just say, I don't really think there's anything that can be done about this.
Yeah.
And then they sit it out. And you and I have had this conversation before. A person of color can't sit it out because everywhere they go, they're still the same color.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people who are white can hide behind their neighborhood or hide behind their job or hide behind other things and not really have to deal with it as much, which is, I think, part of what perpetuates the problem. One of the things that I decided to do as I got into the ministry was try to read at least one book a year that really was maybe written from a different vantage point than what I would. So what I would have naturally found maybe from my other friends and what they were reading. So sometimes it was a black author, sometimes it was a white author writing to advocate for racial justice or harmony or equity or whatever kinds of words you want to choose. And that was really healthy. So it would provoke me to ask questions to the black friends that I had. Like probably the first one was Lester Sell Jr. Senior.
Yeah.
I mean, we had him on before. But I had friends where I could test the things I was reading.
That's good.
Yeah. And it always pushed me. And I can tell you there's times I felt embarrassed. And there's times I felt really sad. There's times I just felt overwhelmed with, like, this is such a big problem. Mm-hmm. Is there really anything that I can do about it? Mm-hmm. And, so among white people, sometimes they don't want to necessarily have the weight of slavery hung on their shoulders because it happened, centuries ago. But the problem is we still have the effect of it, today. It
Right.
just shows up in different ways.
Yeah.
And, no one wants to be called prejudiced. And so
Absolutely.
sometimes for fear of being labeled, or maybe it's just because they feel like they're afraid they'll say something wrong. They don't say anything. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of my determination as I would grow would be to try to say, well, what are things we could do? So as a pastor, we would celebrate Black History Month, even though we had very few blacks in our church. Mm-hmm. And there just are beautiful stories that need to be told. I mean, some of the best stories in our American history are stories very few people know.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I could do was I could bring in black preachers and have them share. Although I would always hear afterwards, like, that's the best sermon we've heard in a year.
Ouch.
And sometimes we did like rotating kinds of things where I would go speak at the black church, which I'm sure they were very disappointed.
No, you're so. I've heard you, and I was, as a matter of fact, I kind of jokingly said, "Man, Gary can really preach. He's really good at this." No
well,
wonder.
I tell you what, it's more fun preaching at the black church
I
because
bet.
you get lots of amens.
Lots of amens and
Preach
not
it,
here.
Pastor.
Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah, they were very encouraging. So the final story I would tell, Ray, and it brings us more up to closer to this day before Unite. It was before Unite KC, but I was friends with the mayor in Olathe,
Okay.
Mayor Michael Copeland, and had been for some time, and had the privilege of going up and praying with him once a month in his office. And we just pray about the things that were happening in the city and pray for him and his family. And this went on for nearly a decade, so we were pretty close at that time. And one day I was driving to his office, and I just felt this prompting. I think it was from God, like, the mayor's going to ask you a question today, and when he does, you're supposed to say yes. And I thought,
Wow.
oh man, like immediately I start getting nervous. Like, what is this? Like, was that you, God? But I mean, who else would it be?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, well, let's see if he does ask me a question. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. And then I'll know if this actually
There you
came
go.
from God. So anyway, we barely get started, and he goes, I got a question for you. And I'm thinking, oh,
Here it
gosh.
comes. Here it comes.
And he goes, would you be willing to help me start a Hispanic coalition in Olathe? And I'm thinking, why would he ask me that? I'm white.
Right, right.
But I'm remembering in my ear what I think God told me. Now, we did, as a church, have a Hispanic congregation, and we were one of the few churches that did. And so I figured that's probably why it
Prompted
came
him to
and
do
I
that,
said,
right?
well, I feel like I'm probably not the right person, but if you're asking me, will I help? I feel like I have to say yes. And he goes, why do you say it that way? And so then I had to tell him the story.
Why? That's right.
He looked at me really funny. I wasn't sure if he believed that people hear from God like that or not, or how often he hears that in the mayor's office.
Yeah,
Probably
there you
not
go.
very often. But anyway, I said yes. So what I said is, can you give me a month? I have friends who are Hispanic and Latino. I want to go talk to them first. I mean, I think I would try, but if I do, I'm going to have to do it through them, because I know I don't have the qualifications.
Wise
to do
move,
it. So anyway, I did a little bit of research for the next month or so and found out I really wasn't the right person for it. But I did feel like God wanted me to do it. So I went back to him and I said, we'll give it a try. So I started pulling these Hispanic Latino leaders together, and I learned a lot of things I didn't know. Like there's 17 different countries that make up what I would call Hispanic or Latino. It's such a broad term. In every country has its own culture. Most of them have their own dialect or language, and they have their own food, and they don't always get along. And there's a pecking order. And I learned a lot of things I didn't know. But trying to pull them together wasn't going to be easy.
Right.
So, but I did pull together a group of about 20 one day, and so I had 20 leaders at Indian Creek in a meeting. And I'm talking to them about the mayor's offer and how he wants to build a Latino coalition of leaders. He primarily wanted people contending for the Latino population inside of Olathe, and also helping to have information coming back to the leaders of Olathe about how to make Olathe a more welcoming place for the Hispanic population, which I think is noble. But anyway, about halfway through the meeting, this one woman named Sonia, she stood up and she said, well, blankety, 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 blank, why in the blankety blank did the mayor ask you?
Oh, boy.
And so, like, I'm the only white person in the room, by the way. So all the eyes are on me. And I said, to be truthful, I have no idea. I guess because we have a good relationship.
Yeah.
And she said, you are completely unprepared to do what you are asking to do. And I said, you're 100% right. And I said, but I do have something you don't have. And she said, what's that? And I said, a friendship with the mayor. And I said, here's what I'm going to offer you. I will do my best to advocate for you and keep the door open until you as a group can organize in a way you can prove you deserve to be at the table. And I'm going to do my best to give you that opportunity. And I don't pretend to understand, but I'll try to grow every day if you'll help me. And I don't pretend to I'm not going to patronize you. I just want to open the door for you. And so that led to 3 years of working closely with leaders there. We started a businessman's exposition where we had 100 businesses at our church. It took over our whole lower basement area where they brought in food, and they were vendors and brought in windows if they're selling windows and all kinds of things. And it was an expo for Hispanic business people, and continued to just see really good things happen. But I'll never forget going back to the mayor one day, and I said, well, I have good news and bad news. And he goes, okay. I said, which do you want first? And he goes, well, tell me the good news first. And I said, the good news is I think that we can start the coalition that you want to start. And he goes, that's great. What's the bad news? And I said, the bad news is that I think the only way it has a chance is if you would go to all the leaders in the city. You've got to go to bank leaders. You've got to go to the fire chief, to the city manager. You've got to go to the police. You need to talk to people on transportation. If you don't advocate for them yourself and tell them this is a priority, I don't think it has a chance. And it's going to require political skin in the game for you. Like you're going to have to come out publicly and say that this is part of your agenda. And if you don't, I don't think it has a chance. And he goes, let me think about that.
Ah.
And he sat there for a bit and he said, hang on. And he called the city manager in to sit down. And he said, I just want to say this in front of you. And then basically he repeated to the city manager what I had said to him and said, I'm going to do all of this so this has a chance to work in our city. And a little over 3 years later, there was a robust Latino coalition working together in Olathe. There probably is to this day. And Sonia, my good friend, who has colorful language, was elected as the leader.
That's what you get. Well, usually.
And I couldn't.
That's a great
I couldn't
story.
have been happier. But I share that story not to lift me up in any way, only to say that you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Like if you're willing to enter the fray, it can go in. You can be hurt like you're hurt. In this way, in this one, it turned out good. Not in every one.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that's what it takes. Like I felt woefully unprepared. I truly was. All I really had was favor from the mayor, favor from God, and but God did it, and that's the truth of it. There's really no telling the good that you can do if you'll be willing to try.
And you know what, Gary, you mentioned so many good things that I wish I had my notebook, but I can go listen to the podcast, and so can you. But it actually defined the next part of my life that led to Unite KC, which was I really figured something out because where I left off the story was I realized it was for me to get to where I wanted to for my family and financially, I was going to have to leave corporate America because the rungs got cut off of the ladder I was climbing.
Yep.
And so I said, I watched my dad, my uncles, so many people take on the mantle of entrepreneurship, and I said, I know what to do. And then I had that experience at the company of starting something from nothing. So I actually had a friend. I took over the leadership role and became the CEO in an IT business that did really well. But I always had a friend like you who had access. And so whenever I would run up against a wall, whether it was at financing or we're trying to break into new companies to get our people in those companies, I always had somebody who I realized, and it's a very humbling experience, you swallow your pride, that if I really want this money, I need to send Gary in to go get it.
I'm sorry about that.
But you know what? The one thing I've always said, especially in business, all I want you to do is tell me how to play the game.
Yeah.
If you tell me the rules, and if the rule is we don't like black people or minorities as much as we like whatever, then that's fine because I want to win. And so that's all I was, my family saw me not making compromises, but understanding how the game was played.
Yeah.
And so, I go on, having more stories that I could tell like this and actually developing a pretty thick skin when it come to understanding how I could operate in this world.
You got to be resilient.
You got to be resilient.
Yeah.
And as my dad used to always tell me, you can cry, you can complain, and you can go be poor. Or you can play with the cards that you were dealt.
Right.
And I was like, I got you. I want to win. So, I go on. I have this great career, in business. The company did really well. And so in the meantime, I meet Jeremiah Inna. And so he is doing this wonderful dance production called The Underground.
Right.
And so I get introduced to all these new people, new faces. Jimmy Dodd, which we'll have on at some point. Dayton Moore, which we've already had on.
We had Jeremiah too.
We had Jeremiah too. And I have to say this, because of your experiences, Gary, when I met you, I found you to be incredibly well-versed in being able to talk to people from all walks of life. incredibly, way more. And so we always have this illustration of a clock,
Right.
where over here you're even afraid to
Right.
just say the word black or white,
Right.
and you don't know anything about anything.
You're at 1 o'clock.
That's 1 o'clock, and then you make it to 12 o'clock where you're
Right.
well versed. You can talk to,
Right.
and even advocate for other
Right.
groups of people. And so it's no surprise to me that you had all of these experiences that helped frame you. So I am about ready to retire from business life, and so I actually worked my last day at a corporation, and by then I had sold the company.
You thought you were done.
I thought I was done, and I am not kidding you. The next Monday, I talked to Jeremiah, and he goes, "We want you to consider being the executive director."
Yep.
George Floyd had just been murdered,
Right.
and I remember, and if you go back and look at my Facebook posts, I had actually posted, this brings up all these memories.
Right.
And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I have to do something, because I had finally got to the point where I was like, everything I've lived through, I ought to be able to, carry a sign or
Right.
go give some money or something. And then when he asked me to do that,
Right.
these were his exact words: "Jeremiah, I want you to remember this. Hey, so we want you to go pray about being the executive director, but you just got to remember in your prayers, you can't say no." So, and I couldn't. I realized that this was the opportunity
Yeah.
to fight injustices, but more importantly, I knew from being in business with people of all different hues, from being in a corporate culture where I was usually the only black person there,
Yeah.
I knew I could speak both sides of the fence. And so I knew what kind of language would anger my people who were advocates
Right.
and could help
Right.
me. And I knew what kind of language would advocate or anger black people and people of who were minorities, because of that, my experience in that organization.
Right.
So I didn't say no, and I got to meet you, and I got to work with you, and again, the one beautiful thing about all of this is that in getting to know you, we had all these courageous conversations. And I found out that your organizations, long before the podcast, that we were just destined and suited to work together.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Yes,
You've become a dear friend
absolutely.
as well as a partner in business.
Yeah.
One of the things I would say to anybody who's watching is that I do have friends who say to me things like, "It's an unwinnable war." Like, you can't really do anything to make a difference. And if you're thinking about it in a global or even a national way, that I do understand. I watch TV too.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I see social media, and I see people who make posts who just get destroyed by the people who read those posts. So I would say don't do that.
Yeah,
It doesn't
right.
help.
That doesn't help at all.
But what I would say is it does make a difference, at least to one. Like start there. Start with the people closest to you, then broaden that ring till you can reach out further. But it absolutely does make a difference that you and I are friends. It makes a difference that we do Unite KC. It makes a difference for people who come to our events, like the Walk for Unity, or other kinds of training events we do. Like this week, we're doing a training for Alpha. It's an evangelistic endeavor for the church. But when we do these kinds of things, it makes a difference even for one or for a few, and that's worth it. For them, that might be their whole world.
Yes.
They feel loved, they feel accepted, they feel seen. All of those things are so important. And so I just would say it's one day at a time, it's one choice at a time, it's one person at a time. And if you keep doing it, you're going to make a bigger difference by the end than you ever thought you would.
Yeah. And so I would say you're absolutely, my job is to echo your sentiments in this podcast.
Not at all.
But if you think about it, that's the most important thing you can do, is to help not influence, but to help just show that type of deference and love to just the people in your circle. And as you begin to do that, your circle widens.
It does.
And that's how that is the premise that 5.5 years ago, we were new and nobody had heard of us.
Right.
And we just started having cups of coffee with one person at a time until
do one good thing.
Do one good thing. As a matter of fact, so we were just celebrating yesterday at our board meeting that we have probably 7,000 people that get our correspondence and who are on our side and cheering for us. And the president of our board said these very words. They believe that Unite KC is a sleeping giant, and so
we need to wake up.
That's right. And we can only do that with you if you like, share, and subscribe.
I only liked part of what he said, the giant part. I
the
like
giant
I didn't like the sleeping part.
The snoring.
I'm going, what are you talking about?
There we go. Well, our time is gone, but Gary, if you wrap us up, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. I would just encourage you to tell your own stories. So like, subscribe, share, and tell your own stories. They're always fascinating. They're fun to tell. And I mean, some of them are heartbreaking too. But I think storytelling is one of the things that draws people together. And that's part of the benefit of this podcast. So thank you for being a part of the listening audience. It's even better if you go do what we've talked about in Courageous Conversations. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Courageous Conversations.
We hope you heard something that encourages you to start these conversations in your own life.
Because when we talk, listen, and learn together, we move closer to uniting people, uniting neighborhoods, and uniting KC.
And don't forget, you can find more stories, events, and resources at unitekc.org.
So until next time, go love your neighbors at all costs.